If you are reading this, it means they still haven't found me. When the Martins booked their first weekend getaway at 41 Willow Creek, they weren't expecting luxury. It was listed on Airbnb as a rustic retreat with character, which in real estate language usually meant old pipes and peeling paint. Still, it was cheap, spacious, and only a 2-hour drive from the city. For Ethan and Sarah, it felt like a chance to get away from work stress. For their 13-year-old daughter Lily, it was simply another house with Wi-Fi. The driveway was lined with crooked trees that seemed to lean inward, as if trying to keep the house hidden from the road. Even the air felt heavier here, like it carried old secrets. The listing photos showed cozy rooms with mismatched furniture, but in person the house had an entirely different aura. The place smelled of dust and old wood, like the air hadn't been stirred in decades. Wallpaper curled away from the walls in strips, and their voices echoed in the empty rooms as though the house itself were hollow. Shadows stretched long in the corners, and the old grandfather clock in the hallway ticked faintly, though no one had wound it. "First thing we do," Sarah said, setting down a bag, "is figure out what we're cooking tonight." "Spaghetti," Ethan argued immediately. "Spaghetti on the first night?" Sarah frowned. "That's too boring. We should make something fun, like tacos." "Fun is messy," Ethan countered. "Spaghetti is simple. Besides, I don't want to spend our vacation chopping vegetables." Their laughter carried awkwardly in the empty kitchen, bouncing back at them as if someone else was laughing along. Their playful debate carried into the kitchen while Lily slipped away upstairs, rolling her eyes at the same kind of argument her parents always had, petty, harmless, but endless. She was restless, curious, and already tired of watching them haggle over dinner. The upstairs hallway smelled older, heavier, as if time itself was trapped there. That's when she found the attic. Cobwebs clung to her hair as she wandered the narrow space, flashlight beam cutting through the dust. In the far corner, beneath warped floorboards, she noticed something wedged deep in a crack. She pried it loose with a bent nail and pulled out a small, weather-beaten diary. The leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, careful not to tear the brittle paper. On the very first page, written in uneven child's handwriting, were the words, "If you are reading this, it means they still haven't found me." Lily froze. She brought the diary downstairs, eager to show her parents, but Sarah barely glanced at it. "Old junk," she muttered. Ethan laughed, saying it was probably some bored kid's prank from years ago. Only Lily kept reading. The house groaned just then, as though disagreeing with them. The diary belonged to a girl named Eleanor, who had once stayed in the very same house. Her entries began like any child's, complaints about school, little doodles of flowers and cats, but within a few pages, the tone shifted. She wrote about scratching in the walls that grew louder at night. About whispers that came from beneath her bed. Every entry felt like a cry for help that no one ever heard. The last full entry read, "Mama doesn't hear it. Papa doesn't hear it. But it's in the basement. It wants me to come down. If I don't write again, you'll know it took me." The words bled into the paper, pressed so hard they nearly tore through the page. That night, Lily tucked the diary beneath her pillow. She didn't sleep. At exactly 3:07 a.m., she sat up, heart pounding. The house was silent, except for the groans of the old wood. The silence pressed against her ears, so thick it almost rang. The shadows in the corners of her room seemed to pulse, growing darker the longer she stared. Curiosity gnawed at her. She pulled out the diary again and began whispering Eleanor's words softly to herself, reading each line out loud as though speaking for the missing girl. Her lips trembled as she mouthed the final words. And then, from beneath the floorboards came a slow, deliberate knock. Then another. After a long silence, she swore she heard a rasping child's voice whisper her name. By morning, she told her parents. Ethan chuckled, calling it an overactive imagination. Sarah scolded her for filling her head with ghost stories. To prove her wrong, they went to the basement that afternoon. The air was damp and metallic, the smell of rust and mold clinging to their clothes. Something dripped in the dark, steady as a clock. Lily's flashlight beam skimmed the doorframe, and she noticed something her parents didn't: tiny fingernail scratches etched deep into the wood, as if someone had clawed to get out. Some of the grooves were stained dark, as if they had once been wet. She said nothing. The following nights were worse. The knocking came back, 3 knocks, always beneath her room. The house grew colder. Lights flickered without reason. Sometimes, Lily would glance at the mirror and think she saw a small figure standing just behind her, only to find the room empty. Sometimes she heard breathing that wasn't hers. One night, she opened the diary again. At the very back, hidden between 2 stuck pages, she found something she hadn't seen before. A letter. Whoever you are, please don't ignore me. If you hear the knocking, don't open the door. That's what it wants. I tried to warn them, but no one believed me. They never will. I'm still here. Please, help me. The handwriting was jagged, frantic, the ink smeared like it had been written in the dark. At 3:07 that night, the knocking wasn't under the floorboards. It was at her bedroom door. Her breath caught in her throat. She clutched the diary and whispered, "Go away." But the door handle turned. Slowly. Deliberately. The metal rattled softly, like a hand lingered on it, testing her courage. Each second stretched unbearably long, until even her own heartbeat sounded deafening in the silence. She screamed. Ethan and Sarah rushed in seconds later, switching on the light. The door was still. Nothing was there. The diary lay open on the floor, on a page none of them remembered seeing before. A fresh line had been added. Now she knows your name too. The ink glistened as if it had just been written, curling at the edges of the paper. Sarah covered her mouth. Ethan whispered something under his breath, but his voice cracked halfway through. Sarah's face drained of color. Ethan tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. That night, they dragged blankets into the living room and slept together. The fire burned low in the fireplace, but the shadows it threw across the walls seemed to twist and stretch on their own. Every snap of the wood made them flinch. Sleep never really came, only long, restless hours with eyes half shut, waiting for the sound of knocking that somehow never came. The next day, Sarah asked around town. Most neighbors avoided her questions, muttering they didn't know much. But one old man finally spoke. "You rented Eleanor's place," he said. "Little girl vanished 40 years ago. Cops searched the whole town. Parents swore she disappeared inside that house. Nobody ever found a body." His eyes stayed fixed on the ground as he spoke, and his voice lowered, as though saying her name aloud might call her back. Sarah went back shaken. She didn't tell Ethan. She didn't tell Lily. That night, the family settled in, trying to pretend things were normal. But when the clock struck 3:07, the knocking began again. This time, not from the basement, not from the door. From inside the walls. It followed them from room to room, crawling through the plaster, dragging nails across the wood. The air turned bitter cold, each breath visible. Ethan shouted at the walls, pounding his fists, but the sound only grew louder, closer, until it seemed to surround them like a heartbeat in every corner of the house. Then, silence. In the dark, a child's voice whispered, not just Lily's name this time, but all of theirs. Slowly. One by one. Lily. Sarah. Ethan. Each name dragged out, as though being tasted. Lily pressed her hands over her ears, but the voice seemed to come from inside her head. Ethan's face was pale. Sarah began to pray under her breath. The diary, left on the table, snapped open on its own. Jagged strokes scrawled across the page before their eyes. You should never have read it out loud. Sarah swore she hadn't. Ethan swore he hadn't. But Lily began sobbing, admitting she had whispered Eleanor's words in bed days earlier, not realizing it mattered. The diary pages fluttered violently as if caught in a storm only it could feel, before slamming shut. The house groaned, the walls bending inward as if the whole structure were breathing. The ceiling above them shifted with a sound like grinding bones. That was the last anyone outside saw of the Martins. Days later, when neighbors reported the family missing, police found the Airbnb undisturbed, bags half unpacked, meals left unfinished, lights still burning. No blood. No forced entry. Just silence. The only thing left was the diary, resting neatly in the middle of the living room floor. The final page was smeared with ink and fingerprints, but one line remained legible. If you are reading this, it means they still haven't found us. The house still stands at the edge of Willow Creek. The Airbnb listing keeps disappearing and reappearing. No one stays longer than a month. Some say the knocks begin on the first night, always at 3:07. Others swear the diary is gone, until it suddenly reappears, waiting in the attic for the next guest. And if you ever find yourself standing outside its door, ask yourself one question before stepping inside. Would you open it, knowing what waits on the other side?